On today's episode of the ThriveMore podcast, I interview Tihanna Louise. Tihanna was in major broadcasting and a news reporter, a writer, a producer for some of the major networks, and would rub elbows with the who's who A-listers in different scenarios. But she left all that to start a consultancy around communication skills, communication practices, executive leadership. She's a deep thinker. You can just hear her think through her answers and really think through what she wants to say before she does, which I just have a strong appreciation for. So you're really going to enjoy this one. Just a wonderful woman. Enjoy. She actually has a really cool background because she has experience, vast experience as a respected television and radio news reporter, producer, and writer. And she's covered stories around the country for major networks. With her experience, Tihanna has expertise to teach audiences the true art of communication. As a transformational keynote and international speaker, she works with individuals, corporations, and audiences to amplify their communication, connection, and confidence so they can have a positive, influential impact on the world. And in just a really short pre-interview that I did with her, she's also a super nice person. So I think you're going to enjoy this. Tihanna, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Roger, thank you so much for the intro and thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Tihanna, I want to dive right in because I feel that we've got a lot to talk about today. Your career as a TV and news reporter led to meeting some really influential people like Bill Gates, Kamala Harris, Magic Johnson. So you were kind of bumping elbows with some pretty influential people, but you found that you weren't fulfilling your inner passion, even with all that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when it comes to the work, I think I'm no different than many other people. I loved the work. There was nothing more fulfilling than going out, covering stories with real human beings from all walks of life. Yes, that included the quote unquote A-list folks, the celebrities, the big name politicians, all of that. But it also included a lot of regular, everyday people who were heroes in their own lives and doing really great things. So the work I loved, I excelled in it, I thrived in it, no pun intended. But like every other job and industry, there are a lot of other things that go into doing the work, a lot of policies and practices and office politics and bureaucracy. And over the course of 15 plus years, it became really tiring. It also became really clear that it was not the way that I really wanted to tell stories or help other people tell their stories.
Yeah.
And so that's why I ultimately decided to leave that industry and start my own company.
You did that. You leave big media and you pivot to executive leadership, personal development, and really helping people communicate better, which you obviously have the background for with your news and reporting and writing. How did you choose that, and what was the first step? So a lot of people listening to this show, they're trying to figure out what their first step is, and so full pun intended, drop the mic on news and decide to start your own thing. I'd love to hear about that.
It's really interesting. So I did what a lot of journalists do when they decide, hey, I just want to have a normal life again, which was another reason why I left news. It's 24/7, constant work, grind, holidays, there's never really any downtime. So I did what many people do. I went into PR and marketing. I had the luxury of being in the Bay Area, which is where I'm from. So it was really easy to get into that space with a lot of tech companies, large nonprofits. And I did that for a long time, all the while holding on to this desire to start my own thing. And honestly, it really chose me because once I went into PR and marketing, it was just natural that I was being tapped to not only help executives with their communication, speeches, things like that, but also with media relations, media training. Because I also had a professional and personal development background, that started me down the road of noticing, hey, a lot of these guys, even though guys and gals, I should say, a lot of them know how to speak well to other people, but I'm noticing they don't speak that well to themselves. And so inside of intimate interactions with these people, I just started having these conversations with them, and it stuck. It was something that I found people to be interested in. And that's when I started to really, tune into, hey, I might be onto something here. And this is the part of the work that I'm finding really interesting.
I love that you said that it found you. I love that. Can you just rewind just for a second? You said they were these guys and gals in these very high level positions had great communication skills and speaking to others, but then I heard you say, but not to themselves. What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is some of the people that you see on TV every day running these very large companies, and if I were to say some of their names, you would all know them. Behind the scenes, they go through the same things that everyone else goes through: doubt, insecurity, frustration, anger. And all of that tends to show up in the one of the only spaces where they really feel comfortable being, and that's with themselves.
Yeah.
Inside of the kind of work that I do, I'm naturally in a more intimate space with folks because I have to get inside of their brain in order to, replicate how they think and how they
Yeah.
speak on paper or for whatever medium it is. And it just started to become painfully obvious that even though they're larger than life in many respects, right? They have these huge personas on the inside. They're just like everyone else, dealing with a lot of turmoil and tension and resistance and, all of the things, emotional distress, I would say, and
Yeah.
mental distress that often is not talked about. And often, because of the positions that they hold, they don't feel there's even room or space for it to be shared or discussed.
Yeah. We're in a CEO role. You're supposed to be Superman or Superwoman. And
Exactly.
we all put our pants on the same exact way, all, have the same exact situation. And I would guess, I have found this, but you've certainly worked with a lot of high level executives. I think a lot of new people recently promoted or just, moving up in their career, they experience a lot of imposter syndrome. Geez, I don't belong here. It's, I'm not ready for this. And I got to fake it till I make it. And I would bet that a lot of the people you've worked with who are already in that job still deal with imposter syndrome from time to time, even though we see them as, oh yeah, they've arrived, they're there, they're settled. Probably mentally not so much. Can you speak to that?
I wouldn't say they deal with it some of the time. I would say they deal with it all the time. I mean, here's the deal. When no matter what level you get to, there's always a new level that
Yeah.
you want to reach. There's always something bigger, something better. As human beings, it's our nature to constantly shift, change, grow, and evolve. And just because you quote unquote make it to any particular position, that doesn't mean you're done, you're finished. And
Yeah.
so what I found, and this is what I tell a lot of middle managers that I work with who have aspirations of moving up, even when you get there, there's still work that has to be done. I don't, and imposter syndrome, it's a buzzword, and I tend to shy away from it because, people have an idea, all these ideas of what it means. But for all intensive purposes, it's a relatable word. And so, yes, it's something that, and this is the piece that I think I personally would like more people to lean into. It's something that never really goes away, but it is something that you can learn to effectively manage and learn to manage it well. And it's truly a practice.
I think that could really benefit some listeners. And if you could speak to just, a few, not that we can solve it all here today, but if you could speak to a few things that people could practice, put into practice, I should say, to help overcome some of that feeling, which is really anxiety. It's bottled up anxiety and insecurity that we all feel at times, as you said, or if not all the time. What are some of the tactics that you use with your clients to help them through that?
Yeah, without sounding cliche, but it is what it is. The biggest thing is the two A's: awareness and acknowledgement. Being aware enough of yourself and who you're being in any moment, that you can tune into something's off here. I'm not feeling like my true self, my authentic self, whatever you call it. And being able to, inside of that awareness, acknowledge that with a lot of compassion. A lot of the work that I do with leaders on the executive coaching side is helping them give themselves permission to not be right, to not be okay, and to have feelings of shame, embarrassment, self-criticism. And so the first thing is just being able to tune in, be aware, and acknowledge. How you deal with it depends on the situation. I have a CEO who I've coached for interviews with media. And it's something that no matter how many times they do it, it makes them really nervous. And the more that they try and resist that nervousness, the more they tend to mess up the interview, or,
Sure.
mess up in their mind
Yeah.
in the interview. And so and that's because the imposter syndrome is coming up. They feel like they have to be the expert. Maybe they get asked a question that they're not prepared to answer. And they're like, oh, I'm not the expert. Why
Yeah.
am I, whatever. And so one of the things that's worked really well is a technique that I call name it to tame it. Instead of flubbing your way through the anxiety and the nervousness that is very clear, it's visible, it's on your face, right? Just pause, take a deep breath, and say, you know what? Wow, that question really caught me off guard. Or, whoa, something about that question makes my stomach turn, or makes me a little bit nervous. And so utilizing, and I don't know if we're going too deep here,
No, this is great.
but utilizing this technique of just being willing, like how much courage does it take to, in the moment, call out, name what you're experiencing inside of your body in the moment? That's powerful.
Yeah.
And it dials down the anxiousness. It also takes power away from the inner critic that's looming so large in your mind and puts you back into the driver's seat.
Yeah. I love two things you said. One, courage. Just one of my favorite words, because courage can get you through almost anything. It may not be fun, but you can get through it. And it's the courage. What I'm inferring from what you said, we're just kind of paraphrasing, is to give yourself permission, especially in an executive role. I know I'm my harshest critic, right? I'm harder on myself probably than any of my direct reports or the team, but we have this dialogue in our head, as in the C-suite, that this is how we're supposed to act. That's what we're supposed to do. But it's giving yourself permission to not be perfect, because we're not anywhere close to it. And the more that we can give ourselves that permission, I think the more courage we're able to drum up to go to the next thing.
Another thing I would say about that is one of the things I tell my clients all the time when it comes to dealing with quote unquote imposter syndrome. What would you say to your kid if they were in the same situation? What's all of the positive pep talk? You would tell them you can do it. You would tell them it's okay not to know. You would tell them there's no such thing as failure, right? There's only learning. Why is it that, and you would say this to your best friend if you're not a parent, right? You would say it to your best friend or anyone. So if you would say it to someone else, why wouldn't you say it to yourself and really believe it?
That's so insightful and so true. It's so true. Like, I can't imagine being as hard on my children for getting, worked up over something as I am myself, which is just crazy when you stop to think about it. So that was, thank you. That was a gift. That was wonderful. That was wonderful. You have a concept, as I did some research for this interview, around energy leadership. Can you speak to how you define that, what it is, and how do you have it?
Yeah, well, energy leadership is a concept and a framework that was developed by a really nice guy named Bruce Schneider. He's the founder of the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching. It's where I got my certification in coaching. And at its core, energy leadership is really about the energy, the thoughts, feelings, and emotions that we bring into all of our actions and our interactions. And more importantly, the perspectives, the beliefs, the filters that shape how we show up. And so inside of energy leadership, there's a tool called the Energy Leadership Index Assessment that measures your energetic makeup. It reveals all of the hidden beliefs, limiting beliefs that, whether you know it or not, are running the show with every single person, situation, circumstance you find yourself in. And I find it to be a very helpful tool for professionals who are navigating, professionals and entrepreneurs who are navigating the complex world of business interaction.
And I would imagine that relates to how they communicate. So when you're bringing that energy, that's going to relate to what I'm trying to say, the effectiveness of their communication.
100%, because I tell everyone that I work with, I say, you don't have a speaking problem, you have a thinking problem. Why do I say that? Because when you open your mouth, unless you have some sort of physical disability that prevents you from speaking, you open your mouth and the words come out just fine. But what impacts your speaking, what impairs it, is what you were thinking about yourself, about what other people are thinking about you, all of the thoughts that you're having as you're communicating. And there is energy behind that. It brings up emotion, feelings, the thoughts. And what the ELI does is it breaks energy down into, and perceptions into, these 7 levels, right? 1 being the lowest level of energy. It's, long story short, is victim consciousness. 7 being the highest level of energy. It's where you're, fully blissed out, living the dream, all inside of your passion. And within these levels, how you communicate, right? It shows up. And so, yes, there's definitely I think I'm answering your question. There's definitely a correlation between energy leadership, the tool, and how people communicate. And if you want to become a better communicator, part of part of the process that I take my clients through is helping them figure out, okay, well, what level am I coming from now in terms of my thinking and speaking versus where I would like to be.
Hey everyone, as you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. What would you say? I would love your opinion on this. I'm sure when I was growing up that I'm a Generation X, so I'm sure the baby boomers, like those Generation X kids and, blah, blah, blah. It just seems to me, and again, it just maybe I've aged into that, but it seems to me today, there's just this real demarcation with Gen X, millennials, Gen Z around communication and just these, I don't know if the media, if it's our society, culture, but literally, there's these hard lines of demarcation between the generations, more so than I remember it being growing up. And I would love your take on the challenges of being a coach, especially one who specializes in communication, of spanning those different generations, because it seems like everybody's trying to pull them apart when we should be coming together. So I just love your take on that.
Oh, that's interesting. I think the good news for me is I tend to work with people who are at least 30, 35 and up.
Yeah.
So they're closer, they're within my generation.
Yeah.
But I am a mom of 4.
Yep.
My youngest is 10. My oldest is 23. And so I run into this literally every day
Sure.
inside of my personal life. And, it's a good question. One that in this moment, speak of name it to tame it, I would have
Yeah.
to say, I don't have the answer. But just from what I observe, it's so great that we're so connected these days with all
Yeah.
of the information and social media and all of these channels. But what comes with that is a platform for people, for everyone to share all of their beliefs and opinions in ways that we've never done before.
Yeah.
And so I just find that on the planet today as a whole, no matter what generation you're in, there's just a whole lot more judgment.
Yeah.
There's just just everything and everyone is constantly under the microscope of someone else's values, beliefs, and opinions,
Yeah.
right? And the platforms that we communicate and interact with each other on today would have us believe that not only do we deserve to have an opinion and share it, but guess what? Ours is right.
Yeah.
It's the correct way.
Yep.
And I think that's a dangerous perspective to operate under. And I think that, in my humble opinion, in some respects, it's taken us backwards.
Yeah.
And we have to be really mindful of that. My kids, like, I spend a lot of time really trying to deconstruct how they think, why they think, even some of the opinions they have about me and my generation. I mean, some of it is really hard to sit with. Like, I don't like it. But I really try to understand their judgment of it.
Yep.
And, I take it with a grain of salt. But I mean, to answer your question, I really just believe that in at least in my lifetime, this is the most judgment I've seen ever. Like, everyone is just judging everyone else and this and that. And it's just like, oh my goodness, this is not okay. And guess what? It shows up in the workplace too.
Yeah.
That judgment impacts our listening of each other, right? We really believe, oh, we have this other group figured out. So much so that we don't even need to listen to what they say, because we already know what they're going to say. We already know how they think. Right?
I'm so in agreement. My experience, Tihanna, is that growing up, you would debate. And I'm still going to have my opinion, but I'm going to hear your side. And then at the end, I'm going to say, I don't agree with you, but that's okay. And you'd say, I don't agree with you, Roger. And that's okay. And what I'm seeing now is, I don't agree with you, and here's why you're wrong. And we're not finishing this conversation until you come to my side. And my side is absolute. It's right. It's absolute. And I'm my own daughter. I'll have these conversations where I'm like, well, I just want to disagree with you. I just don't agree. You can't, you're fundamentally wrong. No, I just don't agree with what you're saying. And it rocks. I love her. I love her to death. It's my apple of my eye. But it doesn't compute. Like, you're wrong. This is the right way to think. And I'm like, no, we just don't agree on that. But it's difficult for her to hear that.
So she may be best friends with my 17-year-old son and my 23-year-old daughter. Yeah. So there's a tool that I teach my clients called Disagree and Discuss to help resolve conflict or or facilitate challenging conversations in the workplace. That does not work. That framework does not work with my kids at home for the very reasons that you just shared. And what I will add to that, what I've noticed is, you disagree too much. Not only are you wrong, but you're canceled.
Yeah.
You're canceled. The boundaries will go up. I don't even talk to you.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Luckily, these are my children, so they won't cut me off. But I'm like, if these were just people I were coming across on the street, I don't know. Now, to be fair to the younger folks, part of the reason why I do what I do is because I see this kind of consciousness coming up in the 40 plus crowd in the boardroom.
Yeah.
I think the beliefs and behaviors behind it come from a different place, but it still shows up the same.
Yeah.
Again, you're living in this, what I call this judgment era.
I mean, you're uniquely qualified. I would, again, I just love your thoughts. I have almost gone on a news sabbatical because every time I never watch it at home, but if I read it on my phone, and I'm sure the algorithm's feeding me, stuff to make me angry. So I'll click even more. But you worked in the news, again, this is my feeling, perception, maybe not fact, in a time when it was more reporting, more news. Here's what we know. Here's what we're going to share about it. We don't know this. Where today it's just, we don't know anything, but we're just going to make up something right now. So you'll keep watching. I mean, I oversimplified that, but I would love your opinion from coming from that industry and being high up in that industry, from where, the truth is what mattered. You were trying to get to the truth, and it doesn't feel like that today. And I just love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, what I would say to that is there seems to be less, and I want to preface it by saying there's still good journalism in the world.
Of course,
right?
of course.
However, overall, there does seem to be a practice that has taken hold of moving further away from the truth and trying to nail whatever the trend will be.
Yeah.
And by trend, I mean the hot headline.
Yep.
Right. People aren't reading the way that they used to. So we just need a juicy headline. What's the headline we can spin here? As someone who spent 15 plus years in the news, it was like there was a time in my life where by 6, 7 a.m., I had read every single newspaper, every blog that was of substance. I had consumed it all, right? It was my job to know everything, and I really enjoyed it. Ask me today, how much news do I consume?
I would imagine not very much.
Hardly any.
Yeah.
Hardly any.
Yeah.
When I hear things, because it's, impossible to be totally tuned out. When I hear things, the first thing I do is I just start researching it. I don't need to read someone's article, someone's spin or opinion on it.
Yeah.
Especially if it's from one of what I call the big threes, the big networks. No diss to them. I made a great living with them for a very long time. But I'm also very clear how the news cycle works. I'm very clear how creating stories and getting them into publication works. And for me personally, I think we've been in the era where you take the news and then you go find the truth in it on your own.
That's good. That's great advice. Great advice. Last couple of questions here. This just dovetails exactly what you just said. I love to read. Listeners know that I'm an avid reader. I voraciously read business books, and I love biographies because you get the story along with all the great business nuggets and learnings. But it doesn't have to be business. Is there a book that you read a long time ago, maybe you just read recently, that when you set it down, you said, man, that impacted me. That has an impact that you could share with the listeners, and we'll put it in the show notes so that they can click on it and go buy it if they want to. But is there one that you can think of, a title and author?
I absolutely hate that question.
Because you have so many? Is that?
Because I have so many.
Yes. Or you can name a couple. You can name a couple.
Yeah, it's like asking who's your favorite child.
Sure. Well, that depends on the day.
On the day.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm reading a book right now that I'm really into. And I don't know the author. Book is called 10X is easier than 2X. And I really love this book because it's about making quantum leaps in your business or your profession by not doing what we're programmed to do, right? You want to make a quantum leap. We start thinking of, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that. We start thinking of how to do more.
Yeah.
And this book is really about looking at how do you make that quantum leap by doing less, but strategically doing less.
It's funny. There's a book by Grant Cardone called 10X, and I've read that. I've actually read it a couple times, but I've heard of this one, 2X or 10X is easier than 2X. Yeah, but it's one of those things I like. Maybe it's a recommendation on Amazon, but thank you for that because I'm personally going to buy that because I love that thinking because you're right. I want to improve. Okay, I need to do more of what I'm doing. Now you probably need to change the whole game to truly 10X. You can't just do 10 times the amount of work. It's impossible, if you're already there. So thank you for that. Is there another one though that you love to share?
Another one. What's one so anything by Robert Greene. So I'm really big, the books that I tend to go to as like how you would the Bible, right? You just kind of use it as a resource to help you through the days. Anything by Robert Greene. He wrote the
48 Laws of Power.
48 Laws of Power.
Yeah.
That's one of his most popular ones.
Yep.
But he has one that's about, it's the laws of human nature.
Okay.
That one, really, really good.
Yeah.
There's another one by David Hawkins, Letting Go. This book is all about surrender, right? In this world, not only are we living in the judgment era, we're living in the attachment era. We're attached to so many things. And in the professional world, we've become hooked on outcomes, right?
Yeah.
Getting to a certain outcome and having things manifest in a certain way. And if it doesn't, then we're like crushed. And so I tend to dip in and out of this book a lot to keep a healthy sense of how I want to navigate and manage my expectations, because there's nothing wrong with having them. It's a very human thing. But how do I have them without being ruled by them?
Yeah.
I don't want to be ruled by results. I want to be ruled by the process of creating the results.
Yeah, in the journey. I love how you say you dip in and out of it. A great book is not meant to be read and set down and put on the shelf. It should be something you go back to, and maybe it's 4 pages, 5 pages that just able to get you right back there, and then nourish. I call it nourishment for your brain. Just those little dips in, and just I'm going to reread this one chapter because I know this is it'll serve me. I love that.
Every book that I really, really love, I read it just like I would a Bible. I pick it up, I go, what do I need to know for the day? And then I just open to a random page, and it never fails. It's always a really good nugget. That is just what I needed to hear right at the right time. It drives my son crazy that I'm always reading 4 or 5 books at one time. He's like, why don't you just pick one up, read them? I'm like, no, I enjoy dipping in and out, and I finish them all.
Yeah.
But I like to have, all of these different concepts that I'm putting together and seeing how they relate and connect. And I need, just like you need different things on different days, sometimes you need different skill sets and knowledge on different days. And so
absolutely,
that's how I read. I'm not the pick one up, read it cover to cover, and not pick another one up until I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah. Right alongside there with you. Last couple of questions. This one's a little different. You live your full, rich life. We get to the end of your life. And by the way, I ask every guest this, and it's interesting. You get to the end of your life and you've lived a beautiful life, but we're at your funeral and you're kind of looking down from above or wherever. And a loved one is reading your eulogy, but he or she is only allowed to pick 3 words, 3 different descriptors, if you will, to describe Tihanna and the life you lived. What 3 words do you hope they would choose?
Well, I would choose the 3 words that make up the contract I have in this thing we call life. So my contract in life is I am a connected, loving, and trusting leader. When I am connected, loving, and trusting in every situation I find myself in, life goes really, really well. When I don't trust, when I'm disconnected, life does not go so well. And when I'm not loving.
Yeah.
So if they could share 3 words about me, it would be, she was connected to us. She loved us. She was trusting with us. And then another word, if I could add a fourth.
Sure.
I'm a rule breaker. She persevered. Perseverance. She never, ever, ever gave up.
You can't lose if you don't quit. You can't lose if you
Amen.
don't quit. Yep. And then second to last question, if Tihanna had a magic wand and today you could wave this magic wand and make one, but only one, material change to the world. And I mean, we wake up tomorrow and the world is different in one material way. How would the world be different tomorrow morning, according to you?
The first thing, so I'm a big believer, you go with the first thing that comes.
Yeah.
And the first thing that came, my intuition said, I'd clean up the water and pick up all the trash. If you want to see Tihanna Louise get upset, watch her walk down the street and just literally see people throwing trash on the ground. I'm like, this is our earth.
Yeah.
This is where we live. Would you go into your home and, open the wrapper, just the product, the wrapper, just throw it on the ground? Hopefully not. So that would be a material change or physical change I'd love to see. Clean water, pick up all the damn trash.
Yeah.
Like everyone would just wake up and go,
It's like having a clean house. You're more settled. You're just more settled, right?
Yeah. Can we declutter the planet, please?
Yeah. Put the stuff away. Well, the most important question is if people, I'm sure they will, want to follow you, connect with you, how would they do that? What's the best way to connect with you?
The best way to connect with me is through social media. I'm at Tihanna Louise on all platforms, at Tihanna_Louise. You can find me most actively on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. You can also go to my website, which is TihannaLouise.com, and that's Tihanna Louise, traditional spelling.
Perfect. We'll put that in the show notes too, so we will just click right on it. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was a joy, and I really enjoyed talking with you, and also enjoyed laughing about having kids the same age, because it sometimes misery loves company. So I appreciate you giving me a little hope there. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.